Are you a parent who has to constantly be walking on eggshells because you're just not sure when the next emotional outburst or tantrum or huge mood swing is going to hit? This is something that is extremely common, right? One time, at one moment, your kid is laughing and they're playing, they're having fun, and the next, there's big tears, there's big emotions, there's hitting, there's some sort of outburst. That is so common, but it is not normal. That doesn't have to be a struggle that your kid is dealing with. And especially if your kid has ADHD, which is up to over 1 in 10 kids these days are diagnosed with ADHD, these mood swings, these emotional dysregulation challenges, they're even more common. And unfortunately, these are typically written off as maybe a chemical imbalance, or maybe it's just a behavioral issue that you need to address from a parenting or a discipline or a behavioral perspective. But there is way more to that story, mom and dad, and that does not have to be what's going on. So don't let providers just write it off as a chemical issue, something you only have to address with medicine, or just hope that they grow out of eventually. There is more truth, and there is a better way to address that from our perspective. So that's what this video is for. If you're a parent who you have a kid that's dealing with maybe ADHD or these emotional swings, these mood outbursts, I want to help you understand what is going on neurologically, right? From this gas versus brake perspective, what is their nervous system doing? And then how can we help put together a game plan to better understand that and use that information to lead to a scenario that they can better process these emotions. And honestly, they just deal with less of it, right? They are fighting less of an uphill battle. We got to backtrack a little bit because what we see is that so many of these kids that are dealing with the school age challenges of ADHD or emotional regulation or even speech delays, sensory challenges, those issues start way earlier in life, right? They go hand in hand so frequently, the ADHD challenges and the emotional swings and the mood and the outbursts. Those are so common because they have an underlying cause. They have the same underlying mechanism that we see start near the very start of life, right? Even pregnancy in utero stress on mom can be a huge indicator of this. Whether there's extra stress in pregnancy or specifically birth intervention, forceps, C-section, vacuum extraction, or just extra trauma on that newborn's delicate nervous system, all of those factors tend to lead to a kid who is more stuck in fight or flight, more stuck in stress and survival mode. So those early life triggers, what we call the perfect storm, those shift a kid's nervous system into a state of stress. And that's what you'll hear us at Thrive talk about as these two different modes of your nervous system. You have your gas pedal and you have your brake pedal. I know you might not be able to read it from there, but you can follow along here, right? Gas pedal is your stress response. That is your survival instinct, or what you might have heard of as your fight or flight. Totally appropriate to temporarily be in fight or flight if there is a true stressor, right? That is what that's there for. But the problem is when we get stuck in survival mode, the brake pedal, which is that wellness side of your nervous system, the calming, digestion, rest, relaxation, really the optimal health side of neurology and development, that's the brakes. You can't be in growth and protection at the same time. If you're stuck in stress, that optimal wellness and development is never going to be able to do what it's designed to do. So the balance here in your child's autonomic nervous system is at the root of pretty much every other health challenge they might be dealing with. What happens with these perfect storm challenges is that they lead to a nervous system that gets pushed into fight or flight earlier on, and then being stuck there creates this storm called dysautonomia. This dysautonomia, it's a fancy word that describes that imbalance. You're out of balance. You're in fight or flight way more than you should be, and then your nervous system, your brain, prioritizes survival, right? We are so smart, our bodies are so well designed that if you think that you are running from a bear, if you think that there's some truly survival mode situation going on, you don't care about emotional regulation or cognitive function or those more complex neurologically weighted things. You just want to survive. And so those more primitive brain mechanisms are what takes over in those overdrive. What we call subluxation, this stress in your nervous system, really creates this locked in tone too. And that's what we'll see with so many of the kids that are dealing with this. They have this extra tone, extra tension that shows up maybe as high shoulders, right? They're here all the time. Their body is just really stiff, really tense. As a baby, maybe they're arching and stiff a lot. They were colicky, they're reflexy, they struggled to nurse, they had torticollis or plagiocephaly or ear infections. Some of the later ones, maybe that tension shows up as walking on their toes, their jaw is clenched all the time, they're not sleeping very well, they have other gut and digestive challenges, teeth grinding, fidgeting, they can't sit still. All of these that we might look at as one-off isolated things are so connected to that tone neurologically. So when we think about it from that perspective, we really got to address one thing, which is calming that tone, restoring that neurological balance. Specifically, that brake pedal can be compromised when, whether it's the early life birth trauma or other situations in development, If this upper neck, if that brainstem, upper cervical spine is damaged, that's where the vagus nerve lives. The vagus nerve is a cranial nerve that comes out of the base of your skull, and it runs almost all of that calming brake pedal parasympathetic function. So if that is disrupted, and if we have that damage up top, we're creating this imbalance to an even greater degree, because now we have high stress and no brake pedal. It's like we have a Lamborghini engine and a bicycle pedal brakes. It's not gonna go well. That kid is gonna feel so dysregulated. They're gonna feel so wound up, and they're gonna have a hard time focusing. They're gonna have a hard time controlling their emotions and so many other things. So think of it this way, right? This RPM ticker from a 0 to a 10, if their baseline is here, it's at a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 instead of a 4, it takes a lot less to push them over the edge, right? If we're here teetering on the brink of a meltdown, it doesn't take a whole lot of being told no or not getting your way, or your sibling cuts in lines and all of a sudden we're at our breaking point. We're redlining and we're hitting that stress response. So what we look at our role as is pump the brakes, right? Bring that baseline down, help get them to a more relaxed, at ease state. And of course, your kid's still gonna have meltdowns, they're still gonna have emotional days, they're still gonna have those outbursts, but they're not gonna be so significant, and they're not gonna be so easily triggered, right? They're gonna have more adaptability, more wiggle room. And that's really what we wanna do through neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic care, is assess that stress, right? That is what our insight scans are for. We get to actually measure and track how is your nervous system functioning. So we'll put together a game plan then of a customized care plan with personalized neurotonal adjustments to correct that stress, to unwind that fight or flight mode and get them back on the healing trajectory. So that's what we're striving for. That's what your kid probably needs. If this makes sense, if they had some of those early perfect storm findings, let's get them scanned. Let's get them checked out and see if that's at the root of helping them thrive.